Good morning, everyone. My name is Lucille and I will be your tour guide for the day. Today, I will show you around the National Museum of the Philippines. Before we head inside, I'm going to discuss to you the guidelines of this tour. First, all guests are required to sign in on the visitor's logbook before viewing the exhibits. Next, firearms, food, bottled water, and ballpens are not allowed inside the galleries. Smoking is also prohibited. And lastly, touching artworks and taking photos of exhibit items for commercial purposes inside galleries are strictly prohibited unless otherwise authorized through special permit from the director's office. Picture taking is allowed for souvenir purposes only, and the use of flash photography is strictly prohibited. The National Museum of the Philippines, a trust of the government, is an educational, scientific, and cultural institution that acquires documents, preserves historical exhibits, and fosters scholarly study and public appreciation of works of art, and also cultural heritage of the Filipino people and the natural history of the Philippines. The National Museum have four branches. First is the National Museum of Natural History, National Museum of Anthropology, National Museum of the Arts, and lastly, the National Planetarium. From the National Museum of the Philippine History to the National Art Museum, we've listed all the branches of the National Museum for you to enjoy. Now, let's go to the National Museum of Natural History. And from here, we can clearly see the Tree of Life. The architect of the Tree of Life, Dominic Galicia, explains that the metaphor of the Tree of Life is both mythological and philosophical. One of the requirements of the project was to make use of the central space created in the inner courtyard. Next, we are here in Lolong's replica, the world's once biggest crocodile in captivity, to the National Museum of Natural History. They've said that Lolong's replica is here to raise awareness on marshland ecology. The National Museum of Natural History has 6 floors which will take a good 2 hours to thoroughly explore. The exhibits floor include botany, geology, and zoology, each divided on their own respective ways. Now we are done in the National Museum of Natural History. Now let's head to the National Museum of Anthropology. The National Museum of Anthropology presents exhibits and information on the origins of the Philippine Islands and the Filipinos. The exhibition focuses on the 4 periods of the Philippine prehistory, which are the Paleolithic, Neolithic, Metal, and Ceramic Age. There are 5 exhibits in the National Museum of Anthropology. These exhibits are also known as: first is the San Diego exhibit. Second, 5 centuries of maritime trade before the arrival of the West. Next is the origin and archaeological treasures, also known as Kaban ng Lahi. And lastly, the Filipinos and their rich cultural heritage. The National Museum of Anthropology contains things and artifacts related to archaeology, prehistoric societies, languages, customs, traditions, and culture of the Philippines. Now, we are here in the National Museum of Fine Arts. The National Museum of Fine Arts is an art museum in Manila, Philippines that houses a collection of paintings and sculptures by classical Filipino artists. Founded in 1998, it was formerly known as the National Art Gallery and is owned and operated by the National Museum of the Philippines. The National Museum of Fine Arts is among the most visited branches in National Museum. This is where you'll find the most historic and most famous National Museum paintings in the country, which are the Spolarium and Juan Luna. The National Museum of Arts exhibits are the Old House of Representative Session Hall, religious art from the 17th to 19th centuries, art prints from the archives of the Royal Botanical Garden in Madrid, academical and romantic art, academic and neoclassical sculpture, classical art from the 20th century, The Process of Medicine in the Philippines by Carlos B. Francisco, drawings of Fernando C. Amorsolo, works of Guillermo E. Tolentino. Now we are here in the National Planetarium. It was established on September 13, 1975 under the management of the National Museum of the Philippines through Presidential Decree Number 804, signed by President Ferdinand E. Marcos, and it was formally inaugurated by then First Lady Imelda Marcos and opened to the public on October 8, 1975. The National Planetarium was established to disseminate astronomical information through various platforms and technology such as full dome digital and mobile planetarium shows, lectures, demonstrations, exhibitions, and actual celestial informations. That will be all for today's tour. Thank you everyone. I wish you had a pleasant day during our tour in the National Museum, and I'm looking forward to be of service to you again. Bye!